All right, we know you guys have been waiting for it. It is this year's edition of the Butt and Breneman Show. Lot to cover. It's the Big 18 this year. A lot of games this past weekend, Adam, so I'm excited to break it down with you. And let's get right into it. I got to ask you just a broad question.
Yeah.
Because it could go 100 different ways. What'd you see this weekend that you would say that player, coach, team is on the rise?
Man, well, Jake, first, it's good to be back with you, man. I mean, I saw you on the first Big Ten After Dark broadcast. You did a great job. But excited to be diving in here with you. And as you said, it's a fun new time to be in the Big Ten because of the expanded conference. And I'm gonna start there. It's tough to not look at USC and be excited about the Big Ten. I'll be honest, man. I think for a lot of programs going into this year, they were kind of not writing off USC, but didn't view them as a viable option to compete for the Big Ten championship. I think that changed after what we saw on Sunday. USC played extremely well and looked like a new version of this USC team. When I spent 2 years coaching when I was out west in the Pac-12, man, we talked about USC a lot because we played them every year out west, and the notion around USC was always that they're not physical, that they're going to get worn down, that they don't play discipline, they don't play tough. That's not the USC we saw in that game in week one. So I think I'm excited about USC. Give Lincoln Riley credit for what he did with bringing in Danton Lynn as his defense coordinator. They got critical stops when they had to. They bowed up when LSU started to run the football. They bowed up and got stops. And then to put that 2-minute drive together at the end of the game, Miller Moss to make some of those throws. Kyron Hudson with the cover 2 hole shot. Perfect throw by Miller Moss to make that happen. I was impressed with USC because it feels like the USC from the last few years would have quit at some point in that game. And this version of the team fought through, battled, came through some adversity, and got stops when they needed to. So I'm giving a big stock up award of the week to USC, and I think they've put the Big Ten on notice. Those other Big Ten teams aren't circling the USC game as a likely W anymore. That's gonna be a tough game for every team on their schedule.
Yeah, and rising stock. How about Danton Lynn? Like, come on, those that knew this was going to be the case. This is why I was so shocked to hear like Paul Feinbaum just talk about Lincoln Riley. I'm like, listen, man, I'm not even shocked by the way the offense looked because that's what Lincoln Riley does. Like, I will not be shocked if at the end of the year Miller Moss is right there, maybe not winning the Heisman, but in that conversation. That's what happens. But last year with USC, not only were they not physical, they couldn't even tackle at a basic fundamental level. It was unbelievable to watch. And then I'm watching them play an SEC football team in the LSU Tigers, and they have guys filling holes and putting LSU on their back. Like, they won the battle up front. That's Big Ten football, to your point. So, yes, USC is definitely up there. I'm going to go right to the heart of our conference there in the middle, the Nebraska Cornhuskers.
Let's go.
Okay, dominant game, yes, cool. But I look at some of the more subtle things about this. Defense played lights out, and Tony White is asked post-game, hey, coach, you talked about the need to force more turnovers. You got 2 today. How do you feel? And he says, yeah, well, I don't care about those. How about the one that hit our guy in the face mask and should have been a turnover? And it's like, keep your foot on the gas. Don't be complacent. And then Dylan Raiola. My goodness. My goodness, did he make some unbelievable throws down the field. He steps up in the pocket on 3rd and 11, rips one sidearm, looking like Pat Mahomes. And the run game came alive. And I just say, wait a second, this Nebraska team not just improved, they can be a team that makes a ton of noise in this conference. So that was really great to see, and a big matchup. I know we'll get into it this weekend against Colorado, but I'm buying a lot of Nebraska stock at this point.
man, and we're going to talk about the game, but coming up against Colorado, but Nebraska just look like a complete football team and look like what you expect in year 2 of Matt Rule rebuilding a program. You look at what Matt Rule did at Baylor, what he did at Temple. Year 2 is where they make the jump. And I've been on record saying there's a scenario here where Nebraska makes the college football playoff. I mean, there's the crazier things that have happened, and this game coming up that we'll dive into is the next step on Nebraska to start the season 7-0 because they've got a pretty light schedule, probably the most favorable in the Big Ten. So so it's going to be fun to watch, and we got a big game this weekend.
Yep. And Matt Rule, I encourage you to go watch, our viewers to go like read through his presser headlines. Like, This dude just gets it. The way he handles the press conferences, he's not buying into he's handling this stuff like a head coach, which I buy into that stuff. It gives me a ton of confidence. There was some surprises across the conference, some good, some bad. I think a lot of us were shocked to see how close of a game Oregon was in, how close of a game Michigan was in. Certainly your alma mater was on the other end of that. Some great surprise. So as you look at this, what are some of the surprising things you witnessed last weekend?
Well, I'll get into two things here. You mentioned the Oregon situation against Idaho, barely squeaking that win out. The reason I'm not too concerned about that game for Oregon is just it surprised me for sure, but I'm not concerned long term just because of who they have at quarterback and Dylan Gabriel. Some of these week one games, you listen to all the hype. Everyone's telling Oregon all offseason how they got the most talented roster in college football. I asked Dan Lanning about it at our Big Ten Media Day when we interviewed him on the Big Ten Network channel. And Dan Lanning, I asked him about the hype, and Dan Lanning said, the good thing about hype is that it impacts absolutely no one in our program. That's not what it looked like on Saturday, though, and Oregon battled that close one. I think Dylan Gabriel, though, having someone at quarterback who's experienced, who's a veteran, who's won a ton of football games, performed at a high level, makes me feel confident still about Oregon moving forward, and I'm not too worried about that close win that they had. The biggest surprise to me was Penn State's offense against West Virginia. The question for Penn State this season, in a year where Penn State has to make the college football playoff, like this is it. Like Penn State has to make the playoff. They would have made it 6 of the last 8 years if they had a 12-team playoff. This is the year for Penn State. The question is, can the offense become more explosive? Can Drew Aller be the 5-star dog at quarterback that everyone wants him to be? And we saw pretty clearly in a big game, one of the toughest opening week games for a Big Ten team, that Drew Aller can do that. He was poised. He was confident. He had a great yards per completion. Their offense had explosive plays down the field. Their receivers played well. How about Harrison Wallace playing well? That was a big question mark for Penn State. How's the receiver room going to look after losing some talent, after losing Condre Lambert-Smith? And that offense looked exciting. The biggest moment to me, Jake, in that game was Drew Aller when he ran the football. I think it was second or third quarter, and he ran down the Penn State sideline on a scramble drill, was about 10 yards down the field, stiff-armed a defender, and lowered his shoulder, didn't run out of bounds, and ran over a linebacker on his own bench, and then started talking smack to West Virginia, was flexing in front of his bench. That, to me, was the moment where I think everyone in that program said, that's our quarterback. That's the guy that can lead us to the promised land. And I think last year, there were moments in critical times in games where the Penn State program, his teammates, where they believed in Drew, but in those big moments, maybe they were like, are we going to score here? I'm not quite sure. A 2-minute drive. Where now I think they'll look at Drew Aller and say, that's the guy who's going to lead us to wins. In those moments, and those moments are kind of giving him a stack of proof in front of his own teammates that he's the guy to lead Penn State to the college football playoff.
Look, and off of that, I give a ton of credit to Cottle Nicky coming in as a play caller because you have got to let me just ask you this, because watching that game, and you're a Penn State alum and a lover of the program, I'm watching. I want to see Penn State do well, and I felt like I remembered to breathe in that game. Whereas, like I'm watching them sometimes play offense against Ohio State, and my chest is tight because everything felt hard offensively last year, and then all of a sudden, bang, they're ripping a post for a 50-yard touchdown down the pipe because guys are running wide open. Okay, here's Drew Aller building enough confidence where he does stiff arm and run over a linebacker and the sideline gets up. Like it looked like they were having fun again. So to me, like, did you feel that like, oh my gosh, like, this is what you want to see out of an offense with that level of talent?
Man, like we have been waiting. The people around Penn State, even the coaching staff, have been waiting to see that swagger out of Drew Aller because they know he has it, right? You know that he has it in him. And what you just said, it felt easy for Penn State out there. And let's give West Virginia credit. This is a really good West Virginia team that I think will win 8 games in the Big 12 this year. So this isn't a terrible week one opponent. This was a good defense they played against, and it felt natural and easy for Penn State's offense. I think Andy Kotelnicki, you know who he kind of reminds me of, Jake, is and just how he gives his players confidence is how Joe Moorhead coached his Penn State team in 2016, the last time Penn State won the Big Ten championship. You can see the players kind of have confidence and want to play for him. And the way he calls the game, I mean, man, he's taking a shot down the field every 4 or 5 plays, calling this offense. So the other thing that encouraged me about Drew Aller and this Penn State offense was it didn't start all that pretty. I mean, Drew Aller missed a couple of throws to start that game. He threw a wheel route down the sideline low. There was another route, I forget what the route was, that he missed. And in the first quarter, the first drive, first two drives, I was like, oh no, like this is not again. And then he came back and hit the post route to, I think it was Harrison Wallace, right on his face mask. So to kind of bounce back from that and then play the way he played was really good. Also, the two quarterback stuff that Andy Kotelnicki did at Kansas, Bo Pribula came in there and ran the ball some and had a good day. So I'm excited about Penn State. Jake, any other surprises for you? I know you were high on Hudson Card, huh?
24-25,
Impressive.
96% completion percentage. You don't fall into that though. Yeah, I mean seriously, like it doesn't that does not happen. I believe it tied an NCAA record. Like that is extremely encouraging. And I just think back to, the deck that Ryan Walters had been handed. Tough schedule and brutal injuries last year, a brutal schedule this year. And yet, they believe in Hudson Card. I mean, this guy was a highly touted recruit. He was their first order of business. And then you come into this season, and let's not forget, he made all conference honors. I know it was honorable mention last year. They're like, hey, where Hudson goes, this team will go. And they got a brutal schedule, a bye week this week, followed by Notre Dame. Man, he's not going to throw 96%, likely the rest of the year, but can he play to that level, to that standard? All of a sudden, Purdue's a team that can make some noise. Also, how about offense with Iowa? We're waiting to see what that offense looks like. We knew what the defense would look like. I think there was some really encouraging things in that game. Even Cade McNamara, all the injuries he dealt with, being able to tuck it and run and scramble for some yards. Okay, encouraging. And I'll finish it out with this. Give some love to Rutgers, which was PFF's highest graded team in college football last week. And we know they got a game this week, but then Virginia Tech didn't look so good this weekend. So this is a team, Rutgers, we've talked about their schedule, that can make some noise. So right there, kind of in the heart of the conference, I thought there was some teams that really showed some positive things.
Man, it's a good time to be a Big Ten guy, man. I mean, 17-1 for the conference. We didn't even mention Maryland with a big win. Mike Locksley, what he's doing there. I mean, it is a deep conference, and some of those middle of the pack teams that you just mentioned, the Purdue's, the Iowas, the Maryland, even a Penn State, like USC performing the way they did. I think we're seeing that this is the deepest conference in college football, top to bottom. There's the elite level of talent. We know Oregon and Ohio State have two of the best rosters in college football, but then it's going to be a battle. And there's a scenario here where Penn State could get a handful of teams in the college football playoff. I'm sorry, Big Ten could get a handful of teams in the college football playoff.
Let's talk about this weekend. A couple of big ones headlined by Colorado, Nebraska. Then, of course, Michigan, Texas comes to Ann Arbor. Let's start with Colorado, Nebraska. Big picture. What are you looking out for in this game?
Man, there's just so much excitement around this game for the Nebraska program. I think Colorado, yes, there's so much hype around that program in itself, but for Nebraska specifically, this kind of feels like a must-win game for Matt Rule. There's a lot at stake in this one. There's a lot of talk in the media, a lot of chatter around the culture versus talent debate between Matt Rule and Deion Sanders. I think really it's a test of the two ways to build a college football program in the new era of college football. I mean, Matt Rule has doing it the way that he did it at his previous stops. He's using the portal, but great high school recruiting and signing Dylan Raiola and having a young quarterback that you develop in your system and with his first year starter, compared to the Colorado model, which is, the transfer portal and getting as much talent as possible. So I think there's a lot at stake just with the outside noise around this game. Obviously, this is a huge game for Nebraska because of what it can propel for the rest of their season. If Nebraska were to lose this game, the journey to the college football playoff gets much more difficult because of how easy their schedule is. But if they win this game, I mean, they could rattle off 6-7 wins in a row here and be 7-0 going into Columbus. So
yes.
You're talking about a Nebraska at Ohio State 7-0. I mean, that place will be absolutely rocking. It'll be one of the biggest games of the weekend. So there's a lot at stake at this game, and I think it'll be the first real test now, obviously, as he's a freshman, for Dylan Raiola and how he performs when the lights are really bright, where everyone's watching and the whole nation is paying attention. So I'm excited, and I think it's going to be an electric atmosphere at Nebraska.
This game is 100% mental to me for so many reasons you just listed, because Yeah, it's a big game for Nebraska where, they don't want to think like this, but we can speculate what happens if they do lose. Like we can
Yeah.
see the headlines now of, wow, here they go. And if they lost, I'd assume it's because they turned the ball over and made mistakes. Just
Yeah.
think about the headlines. Their goal is to not think like that. But it's the same thing for Colorado too, where it's like, and they've done it
Yeah.
to themselves, where they say, hey, when we come to town, that's the other team's Super Bowl and we want to make the playoffs. And it's like both teams have sky high expectations for themselves. But in football, there's a winner and a loser. What happens to the loser? And then the micro level of that is there's going to be adversity in the game. How does each individual team respond to that first mistake? Are they sitting here thinking, oh, here we go again? Or are they able to overcome it? And the big thing then is I look at Nebraska, because I believe that defense led by Tony White is going to give Colorado and a ton of teams issues this year. But I look at the way Raiola handled himself last week. There was a number of times where he gets up to the line of scrimmage and he checks the play, or even once when he checked the play twice before the snap. And I just think that
Yeah.
symbolizes poise. Like he gets it. He understands it. He's not rushed. I never watched a single play where it felt like Raiola was trying to prove himself out there. He just wanted to run and operate his system. So I'm really excited. This is a great test. Like we'll learn a lot about this team, and it's going to be a fun matchup, a night game. Oh man, I can't wait. Like it's going to be great.
And the reality is the winner of this game is it jumps into the top 25, probably maybe top 20. So and we didn't even mention this. Like, let's not forget what happened last year and the bad taste in Nebraska's fans' mouth and their players' mouths. I mean, that was embarrassing last year for Nebraska to come back, especially early in the Deion's tenure at Colorado. So there's going to be a lot at stake in this game, a lot of bragging rights, and naturally, because it's playing Colorado and Matt Rule and the attention he gets, there's going to be a lot of media attention, a lot of eyeballs on this game. What I know you're going to be paying close attention to this Texas-Michigan game to see if Michigan can run the football a little bit, huh?
It's a huge weekend. I mean, look, I just get on social media. We can be real about it. Like there's concern in Ann Arbor. Like I think the fan base is wondering, what happened. And I'll say this. Let me just start here, because my question would be, hey, what were your expectations? Because you're talking about a team that lost a top 10 quarterback, that lost your top running back, that lost your top 2 wide receivers, and your top 6 offensive linemen, right? So like you can't expect it to be perfect week 1. But what's also true is the standard in Ann Arbor is higher than what was shown past weekend against Fresno State. So we can go across the list. We can talk about the quarterback play. But to me, Michigan's success, rides solely on the backs of the offensive line. And I felt at times there was, instead of having 5 individuals play as one unit, which is when they were most dominant these past few years, I saw one unit play as segmented, two over here and 3 over there, or 4 and 1. Like they did not come together. And that's where you start to see some of the separation, giving up penetration up front. And there was not a consistent dominance up front. I will say this, a lot was made about Donovan Edwards being on the cover of NCAA this offseason, and that dude is electric. If there's a hole there to hit, he's taking it to the house. I was really impressed by Khalil Mullings, though, and I would not be surprised if some of that workload starts to shift towards Khalil Mullings as they try to find that offensive identity. But truth be told, they have got to run the ball. That's an explosive Texas offense this week. And their defensive line, they have to win up front. They have to stifle the run on 1st and 2nd down, and they have to win with pressure in 3rd down passing situations. This is going to be a competitive game. I mean, make no mistake about it. You know how that is. When you have a big program coming into your home stadium, there's a pride aspect about this too. And I know Texas is coming into town saying we have a chance to beat the defending national champs. They're going to take everything they can to make sure that happens. Michigan has to be ready.
Yeah, and if Michigan is to win this game, I think 2 things are going to happen. One, they're gonna have to create a couple big takeaways in this game, a couple turnovers, put Quinn Ewers in tough spots, because I just don't think Michigan has the offensive attack, the passing attack to keep up with Texas. And then Michigan's gonna have to run the football well. You just said it. Find a way to run the ball. And I was thinking about that game, and I was like, as bad as the run game looked, to me, I still don't believe that Michigan's going to be bad at running the football this season. It's Michigan football, right? You got elite Donovan Edwards, you like elite running backs. You got You recruited well at the offensive line. I know it was a bad game. I don't think this is a Michigan team that's going to struggle to run the ball all year. But Jake, though, I wanted to ask you about just the quarterback situation because you follow that program as close as anyone. Obviously, one of the best players in program history. I think to me, it's been surprising to see that Alex Orji didn't go win that job. And what it says, one, about that, two, just the fact that Davis Warren was the starter. Obviously, I think people knew that leading up to the game, but what's going on there with the quarterback situation? Because especially Warren didn't play particularly well, and we didn't see Orji get many opportunities. So, like, what's the future look like there at quarterback for Michigan?
Here's where I'll start, because I have and I don't want to just say like I'm an optimistic alum here, but the game plan was very vanilla versus Fresno State. And like I've come to know that that's the case with Jim Harbaugh, and I think Sharon Moore's the same way, where it's like they didn't want to show their hands. I felt Michigan knew that they could win that game, and I will kind of withhold full judgment until after this weekend, because you got to empty the bag this weekend if you want to win. And I felt the game plan, run game, everything was very vanilla. But the quarterback, that was a huge point of contention. And what we knew is it was a close battle all throughout spring and throughout camp. And there's two trains of thought. It's like on one end, you say, if it's a close battle, why not go with the more raw, talented rushing ability of Alex Orji? But then the other train of thought is, hey, this defense is going to keep us in every game. Like that's what the coaches are saying to themselves. So why not go with the Davis Warren, a guy that they feel will throw the ball away and take the checkdowns and be smarter with the football and avoid the mistakes? And I think that was one of the big deciding factors here, is they might be sacrificing some of the upside for a guy in Davis Warren who is more willing to, take the underneath stuff, a little bit maybe more comfortable passing out of the pocket. And yet, Adam, Davis was a high school recruit, and then he had leukemia, and then he missed his senior year.
Great story.
This was an ascending guy. Like, this is not, we hear the term walk on. Like, no, this is a talented guy that can play the quarterback position well in his first start. Like, you'd expect some of these mistakes. In throwing to a whole bunch of new receivers. So I think we're going to learn a lot this weekend. I'm never one to judge off one performance, and really sometimes making mistakes can be a good thing. To your point, your video this morning talking about your freshman year at Penn State with Bill O'Brien. Like, it's okay to make mistakes, but you got to learn from them, and that's what you expect to see this weekend.
I was just going to say that it's a great point, that sometimes the best things that can happen are these close week one games, right? Where you don't blow out the team week one. Think about Oregon. I just talked about Oregon when we started the show, about that close game against Idaho. Sometimes those things are good, because now Sharon Moore, now Dan Lanning can go to their team and say, that was embarrassing. We got the win, but we did not. Like, we're not very good right now. And we need to go figure it out. I think that's the good part about these games that are a little bit closer. Like, you get out alive, but you also get a lot of coaching done from it when you still have a win. I mean, I remember last year, Alabama struggled week one. I forget who they played, almost lost that game. So, and then had a great season. So I think this happens a lot in college football. Let's reserve judgment on Michigan. Let's reserve judgment on Oregon until we see how they perform. And obviously, if Michigan goes out, runs the ball well, Davis Warren plays well, and they beat Texas, no one cares about the 30-10 win against Fresno State anymore.
I'm fired up, baby. I'm fine. We just rattled through it, man. I mean, we could do 4 or 5 hour long shows covering there's just
you just want to keep going. Where are you at this week? What game you got?
I'm going to Columbus, Ohio State.
Oh, let's go. Okay.
Michigan. Hey, and here's something that's real fun. So my high school, Pickerington North, Buckeye defensive end Jack Sawyer went to my high school, right? So it's a crosstown rivalry on Friday night, Pick North versus Pick Central. And since it's a night game, we have no production meetings until Saturday morning. So I'm taking the crew back to my hometown, and I'm going to show Pick North versus Pick Central high school Friday night lights down there in Columbus. It's going to be awesome.
That's awesome. Are they going to do a ceremony for you at the high school game or something? They're going to
pregame speech, baby.
Pregame speech.
Yeah.
Oh, what do you?
If we win, I'll say it's because of the speech, and if we lose, I'll take no blame. So I win.
I already know you're going to have a great pregame speech. I already know it, but I'm surprised they let you call Ohio State games. That's I'm surprised they've let you on campus there.
Yeah, you know what's funny though is I talk to it both ways. Where Michigan fans are like, "How could you say this about Ohio State?" And I'm like, "Do you guys see their? Did you guys watch them play Akron? Did you watch that? Like, are you serious? You're going to downplay what they looked like last week? Do you see what they have? Did you watch Jeremiah Smith last week?
Yeah. And
even got another one. They got another one. I mean, he could be a first-round pick after this year.
And even bouncing back after the drop, first play of the game. I mean, I love that kind of stuff, especially when everyone's watching them. It'll be exciting. I got Akron, Rutgers, Big Ten Network at noon this weekend. Excited to see Rutgers and best graded PFF team in week one, as Akron, you said. So
I know it got away from them, but for a while there, Akron was doing some nice things offensively. Yeah. Like, okay, I think a lot of the mistakes were self-inflicted by Ohio State. Like you talk about that drop, like there, but Akron, I mean, hey, you know, that's a big game for both teams.
Yeah, so, let's do it, man. We'll be back next week.
We'll be back next week, baby. Butt and Breneman Show. Thanks for tuning in.